we got a couple questions about Daniel Jones. Ryan Windles, Nick Elmo essentially asked why we're not more optimistic about Daniel Jones, considering the lack of help that he had during his first few years in the league. You know, they were talking about the podcast where we discussed what quarterbacks need to be successful: offensive weapons, O-line, play caller. And if you look at the offensive weapons that the Giants have had over the last few years, they have not been very good. They've had a bottom 5 offensive line during the majority of his years there. They drafted 2 guys in the top 10 over the last several seasons because of the state of that offensive line. It's arguable that Jason Garrett was one of the worst offensive play callers in the league when he was the Giants' head play caller. So after considering all of this, shouldn't we feel more optimistic about Jones and his potential to be a really good quarterback? Since he entered the league, he's arguably had the worst combination of all 3 things you said a quarterback needed to succeed. Another year under Dable Kafka will obviously help. The O-line appears to be headed in the right direction, and with a leap from Neal and a true young center finally on the roster. The weapons, all note, not great. At least have a couple guys who were once thought of as promising. So, Robert, please tell me we might be wrong about Jones, and he still has a decent chance to be that $40 million player he was just paid to be.
He can keep ascending, I guess. You know, like that. I'm not going to the improvement he showed last year was through the streamlining of the offense. Of course, that's great. I think what has worried me is, you know, we haven't really seen him succeed when he just has to drop back over and over.
Yes.
And yes, you can talk about the situation. I shouldn't cancel that out. You have to include that in the discussion. It's just that because of the situation and what else they had, I've also just had an issue with how long of a processor Jones has been, which is something that he was at Duke as well. And last year was the first time I've seen a little bit of improvement in that regard. Get rid of the ball on time, you know, not making a bad play worse, just going and running and using your legs. If you make a mistake, make it fast, but it's still not perfect. And that was still with an offense that was very streamlined and had some training wheels on it. So in my mind, can he improve? Absolutely. Especially how hard it is to play QB right now and the improvement he showed. And he's such a good athlete, yada, yada, yada. But just some of the concerns I had him as a prospect and a young player, he hasn't shown he's quite above that yet. And that's maybe where I still have some of that hesitations. He has improved. How much more improvement is there to have? And the things that he can improve on, I'm a little hesitant on how much he can. So that's where maybe sometimes I'm a little more glass half empty with where Jones can get to.
The processing point is interesting and important. The fact that he has not shown an ability to really do that when given the opportunity. And that's beyond what he did not do as a thrower last year. Yeah. Just looking at some of the numbers and what he was asked to do within the offense. Okay. He was dead last in the NFL in average air yards to the sticks, dead last in the league. Okay. Mm-hmm. On explosive pass plays that traveled 15 plus yards. So you're kind of excluding yak plays in this. So you have to make a throw to create an explosive pass play. Daniel Jones was tied for 27th in the NFL last year. He had the same amount as Carson Wentz, who started half the games. Yeah. He had the same number as Matt Ryan, who was at the end last season. Yeah. He had 1 fewer than Zach Wilson, 2 fewer than Andy Dalton, 4 fewer than Justin Fields, who threw like 25 passes last season. Mm-hmm. They just didn't ask him to do much. So even if you're building in some improvement from what he was at, and that's my main problem here. Yeah. How many quarterbacks could succeed in this offense, could give you something similar to what Daniel Jones gave you last year? He gave you tons of value as a runner, a ton. And that is something that would be difficult for a lot of quarterbacks to replicate. But I think the offense would look different if they had a quarterback with more passing value and less rushing value. They built this very specifically around him, and it has very real limitations. And with a lot of these other guys we're talking about with young quarterbacks and what you need to put around them to succeed, you have financial flexibility to put things around them. Correct. Because they're young and cheap. So even if you're building in some development from him over the next couple of years, what he needs to be as a quarterback to be worth $40 million a year is significantly more than we've seen so far. So even if you're thinking that he can be better with better pieces around him, that he's still fairly young, they're paying the sticker price for this. So I think that's why it's a little bit more difficult to get excited about his overall impact on the team and the roster and everything else, even if you're building in some improvements from him as a player with better situation.
That's where the disconnect is. It's not that this is the last year of his rookie deal. It's like, no, he already got paid. And you're still hoping to see the development, and just even what he showed with the improvement, and not to rope it in. And I made this comparison between 2 players. Like, just look at the year that Justin Fields had. And it's like, there's still question marks on them. you look at their stat lines, they're not far apart from where they've been in their careers. And you're paying Daniel Jones $40 million though. So that's where it's kind of is. It's like Fields is 2 years younger and they're on the same trajectory kind of thing. So I don't know. That's where I think the disconnect is that he has gotten better, but they streamlined the crap out of that offense. They were making it half field reads. They're running like 5 concepts period, which is fine if it works. Don't get me wrong, but when you're paying $40 million, you want to be able to run a little bit more than just 5 concepts. And I think that's where it is.
3 things can be true at the same time. Daniel Jones can absolutely improve from where he has been over the last couple of years with more time in the offense and with better players around him. That absolutely can happen.
Absolutely.
He can, but at the same time, even if you build that in, you can still think that there wasn't a market for him to the degree that the Giants paid him. If they had asked him to go out and look for this contract, I doubt he would have got it. That's part of my issue. It's not that the Giants wanted Daniel Jones to be their quarterback. It's that I think they negotiated with themselves a little bit in doing this. I think that could be true. And I think that even if there is some improvement, you're asking a lot of him and you're asking for a huge jump for him to provide value on the contract that he was just given. I don't think Daniel Jones was bad last year. I don't think that he detracted from what the Giants were last year. I think it was the opposite. I think that some of his skills absolutely added and some of his very specific skills added to what the Giants offense was. But I still have doubts about what this version and this price tag associated with Daniel Jones looks like over the next 2 to 3 years. That's it.
Yeah.